Okay, so before we take into marking anything out, we need to look at the equipment that we're going to be using. And the first piece of equipment is our ruler. And we see there's brass tips on the edge of the ruler here. And unlike most rulers that you'll be using to date, or up to now, this ruler starts at 0, right on the edge. So it starts exactly at 0. And the brass tips are used so that the wood won't round off and get worn over time, so it prevents the wear. And you'll be familiar, you're mostly familiar with using centimeters as your measurements. So 1 centimeter would be equal to the 10 here, which is 10 millimeters. And from now on, really, we're using millimeters instead of centimeters, even though it is 1 centimeter or 2 centimeters, which is 10 millimeters, 20 millimeters, and so on. And if we see closely, if the camera can pick it up at the graduations, in between your 10 and 20 and 30, you'll see there's a slightly longer graduation. Well, it's not quite as big as the 10s, but it's the next longest one, which is a 5. So every one of those denotes a 5, so 25, 35, 45, and so on. And then each of the single markings are millimeters themselves. So 6 millimeters is roughly the size of the brass strip here. It's pretty close on it, so you see a 5 here, and then one more graduation past the 5 will give you your 6, and it's a common measurement that we use. And normally the measurement of the width of the material is about 44 or 43, and it's easy to get 45 because of the slightly longer marking, and then you're able to step one back for the 44. So that's a ruler. That's our typical woodwork ruler. You may use a steel rule, which is along the same lines. I may have one here, and the steel rule on the bottom row on the steel rule, which is kind of hard to see in the video here, but it's all single millimeters, and you see 1 centimeter, which is 10 millimeters, and then in the top row it's got half millimeters in between those as well too. But no problem using a steel rule or a woodworker's rule, which is this one here. The other piece of equipment that we're using is the tri-square, and a few key parts about the tri-square. This part here is called the blade. It's a lot thinner. And this piece here is called the stock. These are the locking nuts, or the locking rivets. And you can see from the colour here as well too, this material is brass again. And again, the brass is used on top of the wood there to prevent the wood from wearing around and deteriorating. It keeps a nice square edge, or 90 degrees edge on the tri-square. And the angle between here and here is 90 degrees. And it can be used in a couple of different ways. This edge here can be used just to check if something was true or flat by placing it on a piece of wood. We don't have a wide board here, but it can be done that way. And generally, a reference point on wood, what we would use is normally a face side and a face edge. And normally they're your best sides. And another thing that they would normally be is they would be square. So the edge, when we'd be looking along that there, when we hold the square, and now this is kind of an opposite way that I would really want to use this. I would hold it up to the light to see if any light passes by and underneath it, and that should be sitting in tight the whole way along. And you check it closest side to you, about the middle, hard to see that there, and then furthest away. And fortunately that has been machined up square for us. We don't have to make it square. And that's a reference point, face side, face edge, and we use our tri-square always with the brass strip touching either face side or face edge whenever we want to use this to mark lines which are 90 degrees to the edge of the wood. So marking lines are perpendicular, and the term that's often used for this is to square lines onto the wood. So we'll be looking at how we use that in the next video.